Hi, and welcome to Dear Art Producer. I am your host, Heather Elder, and today is May 17th, 2024, and we are joined by VP Executive Producer at IPG Health Creative Productions, Mary Ann Guglietta. Starting her career behind the camera, Mary Ann honed her visual storytelling skills before transitioning to photo research, art buying, and ultimately production. Her passion lies in still art forms like photography, illustration, and CGI, but her experience extends to animation and partner producing for live action projects. Mary Ann takes on challenges in all kinds of creative areas and is great at building strong relationships with agents and artists to always deliver amazing results. Let's welcome Mary Ann. Hi, how are you today?
Hi, Heather. So excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Not only am I thrilled to talk to you, but it's a Friday, so that is a treat. Two great things going on today.
Yes, and I just finished a shoot last night, so I'm still riding that production high, so also feeling great on a Friday.
That's awesome. And it's spring. I'm hoping, I haven't been in New York for a little bit, but I'm back. So I'm hoping I get to actually experience a spring weekend here. So fingers crossed.
Yes, we have had a lot of rain, so it's very green.
I'm looking for those spring flowers. So, well, let's get started. I'm thrilled to hear a little bit about your background. I feel like it's so informative for our listeners and for us to kind of recognize, what your experiences were before you joined IPG or even before you decided to become an art producer, kind of what led you to your path. So maybe if you could just take a few minutes to kind of bring us up to speed on that.
Yeah, sure. So I actually went to school of visual arts in the city for photography, but very soon I kind of knew that I didn't want to be a photographer. It was a lot of creative, and I think I wanted both that left brain, right brain. So I was trying to find my niche. Like I was the person with all the lighting. I wanted to do still life. I was kind of trying to find that order. And then when I graduated, I started doing photo editing, photo research. So that was great because I felt like I was, reading these articles. I was finding the content that, would be laid out with them. That was great. And then I interviewed at FCB Health and landed there on Sandra Gomez's team. And I haven't left since. I loved it, all the challenges. So yeah, my background's more in photography, but now I'm on.
How long have you been there?
It'll be 8 years in October.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Oh my God. And what a team you're on, right?
Ugh,
I talk about your team all the time in terms of how to do it right, how to be respectful of the process, how to be good listeners, how to be great collaborators. I mean, everyone on your team is just stellar. So
thank you for saying that. We really depend on each other. It's a special thing. We learn from each other constantly because, there's always stuff to learn in production.
There is. But you guys are so open to having conversations to make it better. Even when there is a hard conversation that has to be had, your team is really good at having those hard conversations. And I just am always commending or complimenting you. Maybe your ears are burning, at least your ears burn, but just on how well you guys are also at communicating and sharing information. I just got I just got an email today from someone who needs an estimate from us on Monday. And they just kind of listed a bunch of information. And I'm like, do you have a formal brief? Your timeline's really tight. And they're like, well, no, I just shot everything over to you in an email. And I thought, well, I literally thought you guys, I thought of you and your team. I'm like, you'd never do that. That would never happen. And now I look like the difficult one because I asked for a brief and they don't have it. So,
hey, you have to have something to go off of. How do you know what we need, right?
Well, right. Especially with such tight turnarounds, we don't have time to have a lot of back and forth, and that's inefficient anyway. So anyway, I'm ranting, but because I just got the email and it bothered me. But thank you for being so buttoned up and such great communicators. So
thank you. We try.
Well, tell us a little bit about your role and what you do. What does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, so my day-to-days kind of vary. I mean, if I'm in production on a job, then it's all things, from sourcing talent to share with creatives, having those creative calls, the bidding process, presenting the bids to the team, then the client, and then, of course, diving into the estimates, the purchase orders, the talent paperwork. As an art producer, still, managing all of that ourselves instead of having a business affairs. So you get a little bit of everything, right? When you're doing all the process. And then other days it's training, if we have new freelancers, training on, new tools in the systems. I think it's, important to just check in with everyone and just, make sure if someone needs help and you have a little free time on your calendar, like see how you can help out one of your coworkers, And then I guess the last part would be working on scopes, trying to like review and edit scopes for future projects so that we can make sure that, we have proper budgets and we're kind of getting in front of productions to come down the line. So, that's an important role too.
And how does it get decided what project you get to work on?
So I'm not brand assigned, which I love. I'm able to now I'm in IPG Health Creative Production. So I can essentially work for any of the agencies within the network. And so it's a lot based on what are the project needs and what's the timing on it, because, everyone's always in different places. So it's kind of that combination of two. And we have a really great system to make sure that the proper producer is assigned to, an appropriate project.
That's really cool. I don't think I realized that now your team is allowed to work on all of the IPG agencies.
Yes.
New, or am I just late?
I guess officially as of 2024, we did have some producers that are stayed at their like FCB Health or Neon and are more of an agency pod, but then they, also have creative production if they need backup or, more work.
Interesting. Okay, yeah. So tell me what you're known for on your team.
That's a funny one. I feel like most people come to me for their wardrobe approval. I'm kind of like the team stylist.
Oh, wait, is that an option? Okay. I've been this weekend for something. I might send you some pictures.
Oh, please. I love it.
That's great. Okay. I love that. We could all use one of those in our lives.
Oh, you would be surprised. I get random pictures, texts over the weekends. It's great.
Oh, I love that. Okay. That's funny. Well, what would be helpful for photographers and reps to understand better about your job?
I think understanding the full process. I mean, there are levels of reviews and approvals that just constantly happen on the agency side. So, it's to be patient, but to also ask the questions that you need, and then just hope that your agency producer is transparent and saying, we're working on this, but we have to go through 3 more levels of reviews. It's not always like a next day thing that we can turn things around. So I think just understanding the bidding process, and it's lengthy and there's a lot of steps for us.
Yeah. And I think that's such a great thing to point out, and the idea of patience, because it's so hard, right? Because we'll work maybe a week or a day, depending on how much time we're given on a project at an estimate, and we'll hit send, and you'd think, in theory, oh my gosh, I just sent over the estimate. It should be pretty easy to kind of review and compare. But not only are you reviewing and comparing all the bids that you've gotten, but you might be having treatment calls, and you have to have presentations to the client. And then it might be part of a bigger budget, and there might be layers and global and US and lots of people that you have to talk to. So it is a really great reminder for people out there, especially younger artists, to, recognize that there's a lot that has to happen after we hit send.
Yes. And I mean, I do feel it's our job on the agency side to make sure like we've received this and, it's in progress. We didn't forget about you. Because, I know I have heard that some producers, don't let people know if they don't get a job or something. And so it's important that we take you along through the whole process, because, you put so much time and effort in on your end that we just want you to know we respect it too.
I appreciate that. It's really great to hear, because you're right. Oddly, some people we have to chase them down for answers sometimes, which is crazy, but never with you guys ever.
We call them our breakup calls. That's the first thing on our team. When we have to make our sad phone calls, it's like, okay, it's time to do the breakup call. I mean, it's a personal thing for us too. We're invested when we're bidding with agents and our photographers or illustrators or, whatever artist. It's a lot for everyone.
Yeah, well, and we do appreciate that, because the phone call makes all the difference. An email sometimes just has to be the way because of timing or whatever. But with the phone call, we have a minute to get to ask our questions and express our disappointment and also our appreciation. So I really have been over the years trying to coach any artist that I work with that we actually got, even if we don't win a job, think about the undivided attention we got from the team, right? When will you get all that attention from an art producer or a creative anymore, right? It's not lost.
I'm so glad you said that, because I truly feel that if you made it to a creative call, that's a huge win. I mean, I'll be honest, the photographer I shot with yesterday, I've been trying to shoot with her since 2018, and finally that job happened. So I've remembered her, and you don't forget a face or a voice or a promo card. So creative call's a win, because you'll make some sort of impression. May not happen that year, but creatives remember, and so do producers.
I've said this on the podcast before, and Hunter Freeman, years and years ago when I first started, he would always tell me, when I was talking about like getting a portfolio show and how much effort it would take to get into an agency, he would say, how many calls do you think it takes you to get one portfolio show? And I don't even remember what I said. Maybe I would say, 30 calls, 40 calls, whatever it was. And he would say, okay, well, you better start making your calls, right? Like you got to make this 30 calls. So I think about that all the time, and it's very relevant to this conversation because it's the same sort of thing. Like how many times is it going to take to land a job with an agency, right? We won't always have the opportunity. Your work might not always be right. But if it takes 3 times to actually bid with an agency and then land a job, bring the jobs on, like bring on the bidding process. I will lose 2 jobs if the third job is coming my way, just to get the time in front of you and the practice and getting everyone to know you and stuff. So I do try and find the positive in each of those experiences, because it's not fully a loss.
No, 1,000% agree.
So tell me what your clients are asking of you right now. Like what type of creative projects are coming across your desk?
I've seen a lot. So I feel like I had a lot of patient shoots, shooting with real people. That's been big, and then a lot of lifestyle. Lifestyle is still. I get asked a lot, "Are you guys still doing lifestyle shoots?" And yes, the answer is yes. And then that mix of CGI and photography, I feel like that is still very much a thing. So that's kind of the gamut right now.
And when you're combining CGI and photography, are you reaching out to the CGI house first and asking them for the photography recommendation? Are you looking for a duo, or are you going to the artist and saying, who do you recommend? Or does it vary by the job?
It definitely varies by the job, because the way I like to look at it is, what is the most important? Is it the expression of the talent, or is it the creation of the background, right? Because if the focus is going to be talent and expression, I would want the shoot to be very photography driven. If the shoot is really about the CG, then I would probably go right to my, CGI studios, and then have them share what photographer options that kind of work in-house for them, or that they could do, within budget, because we don't often have a full photography usage budget and a full CGI usage budget. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the approach that I take.
Yeah. And we see that on our end too. We represent Pop, and they're a CGI house, or, animation, creative effects, all of it. And it's really interesting, not having represented an artist like that before, to see the way the projects come in for exactly the same reason. Sometimes they come through the artist, the photographer, and sometimes they come through the studio. And it's usually for the same, they're valuing one thing over another. I've learned a lot in that respect.
Yeah, it's an interesting balance.
It is definitely an interesting balance. Okay, what about motion? What percentage of your projects tend to be motion? And I'm not talking about animation through CGI or anything like that. Like, what about just other type of motion projects, like maybe following TV, or, putting in cinemagraphs or anything like that?
I do about 1 to 2 piggyback shoots a year, I'd say. It varies. If there's a lot of patient testimonial shoots going on, then I would say always need the photography there as well. I haven't done a lot of piggyback shoots since COVID, personally. So I think I've only done 1 TVC piggyback since COVID. And I don't know if that's just the way the projects fell, or they ended up kind of doing 2 separate, like a photography campaign separate of a TV commercial.
Yeah, that's interesting that you said that. I'm wondering, when a project like that comes up, is someone else kind of managing the motion side and they come to you and say, we need the piggyback photographer? Or do you have the whole project and you're like, okay, who's going to be the director? Who's going to be the photographer? Like, or does that probably varies as well?
So usually we bid them separately. So we'll have a separate photography budget and then the separate motion budget, whether, again, it's TV commercials or patient testimonial videos, which is really nice. It's just, if TV is leading, then we just make sure that my spec sheet accounts for everything that's not going to be covered in TV. So it's finding the balance. But we prefer to be able to, bid out photography the same way motion gets to bid out a director.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so let's talk about marketing to you. How are artists connecting with you right now, and reps as well? And I think part of that question too is there a more effective and useful message that kind of rises to the top for you?
I'm getting a lot of emails, both from photographers and from agents. It's tough because I'm someone that really likes to meet you in person. I want to hold your book. I want to see what paper you picked out. I want to hear your laugh, see your smile. I don't get to connect as well through Zoom and stuff. So personally, the reach outs on email don't go as far to me when they're coming directly from a photographer that I don't know and wants to set up a call. But what I do, my process is, when I get those, when you send out, if you're representing a new artist or what they've been up to lately, I drag those emails into my folder and then I go back to them when I need to. I might not have time, but I see you pop in my inbox and I'll drag to you when I can give you attention. So that's kind of my process. But the days that I'm in the city, I do try to make the most of it. If there's a photographer that's been reaching out to meet up and I say, okay, I know I'm going to be in the city today with this work, then I would love to grab a coffee or a drink with an agent or something just to get that FaceTime. I miss that so much.
I know. It really is the best part of it. I remember, and I do not miss lugging the portfolios around, but I do miss that even though sometimes it was, weird, I'd be in a room and, people would come in and no one would say anything. It'd be all quiet and weird. But sometimes you'd come in, it would be a big party and fun. And everybody kind of pouring through the work. And I miss that, that opportunity for a creative or a producer to just kind of wander in and just flip through the book, see the paper, feel the paper, look at the prints. Now I feel like everything's digital, from an email blast that I send to you going onto my website to, all of it. So it's just, the opportunity is a lot less to show that work. So
yes.
that medium anyway.
I know. And I set up those creative reviews for, I think, a couple years. And it was such a wonderful time. I mean, I remember creatives being like, what photographer had the book that was in the right corner? I just remember. And it's just see, you made an impression right there. It's great. Yeah. But we're navigating, we're finding our ways to do them virtually or have smaller group meetings. If someone, met someone at Le Book or whatever, and they wanted to do a follow-up call with a smaller group so that it can still be more intimate, I'm all for that.
Yeah. No, I think it's definitely a lost part of our art. But I think what it does, when there is an opportunity for it to show up, right? For you to meet with an artist and them to either show a book or even just a printed project, or for them to share a zine or a magazine, something they've created, a promo piece with you. I think it's a bit more appreciated because it's harder to get it to you. So I'm sure when you look at it, you're like, oh my God, I haven't had one of these in a while. This is great.
Yes. So true.
What type of work are your creatives gravitating to right now? Is there a particular style?
They want to see it all. I feel like the range is such an expectation now because I think everyone since COVID has branched out in what they do and how they shoot and all of that I think just seeing how far you can push things and what your range is really, really goes a long way.
How is AI fitting into that with you guys? Are you seeing creatives using it for inspiration and kind of and even artists, or maybe in treatments to express their vision? I know you photograph a lot of real patients. So the idea of using AI obviously is not an option in that case. So is there conversation around that? Like, authenticity is such a big word in our industry. So I'm always kind of curious how creatively you're seeing AI show up, or maybe not at all.
It's a good question. Personally, I feel like I've seen it more in like the pre-visualization work, comping up things. I think also mostly because of what you said, the authenticity, as well as from a legal standpoint, and especially in healthcare and pharmaceuticals, it is something we're still navigating. It's conversations I've had with legal on how that affects our talent releases, our photography usage. So more to come on that. It hasn't come on my plate so much recently, but I'm sure it will.
Yeah, no, and you're pretty much giving me the same answer that a lot of people do. So I was just kind of curious. How about finding talent? How do you do that?
Well, I definitely start with my folder that I drag all kinds of promo emails, agents that I've worked with, maybe agents that I haven't heard of, one-off photographers, and then maybe I'll go to see who else they rep. I just like when I get my brief, I block time on my calendar and I just dive in for hours and I go down wormholes and find all kinds of talent, because that first pass of links and the feedback I get from creatives is so important. Like sometimes I might be really spot on, but sometimes I'm going back and I had a miss,
Yeah, I can imagine that's the fun part of your job. And I love to hear that you block time off your calendar and it's not just like, oh shit, I got to get this to them. And you just like shoot off a bunch of emails or with links, that you really are just kind of, in the old days, it was you'd file through all your file cabinets, right? And you pour through them and look at all your promos that you saved and you look at source books and stuff. And now I imagine, I kind of geek out on this, but everybody's bookmark systems and their, spreadsheets and their, email folders are just chock full of options for you to go through.
It's true. I mean, the stacks of books and promos we had at our desks and stuff, it's crazy. But yeah, I mean, it actually feels like a more organized workflow, because you do have that like digital track that I can go back, because I'm also a visual person. So if I saw an image in an email, but I can't remember the name or the agent, it's like, I just need to find that. And then I can trace it back.
Yeah, no, I can see that. Okay. So what about sharing the options with your team? I know you guys are, just such great communicators. Is it just a bunch of links that you send them? Is it only the websites to the artist or to the reps? Like what is it that you share with them?
So usually I'll put together links in an email. I would say I usually start with about 20 artist links, and just to get their initial gut reaction, their feedback. If it's a creative team that I've never worked before with, I kind of want to know what their process is. So sometimes they like to hear feedback from me. Who have you worked with? What's this and that? Or sometimes they don't really want my input and they just want to get lost in the work. And then I'll ask for their notes, and then I'll do another pass at maybe another 10 or 15 links. And that I would say would be for like an average campaign. But I mean, of course, there's, smaller, more specific projects that maybe I am like, well, this is a patient shoot. Maybe we should really talk about a production company and go through them, because they know the difference of a branded campaign shoot set versus what a real patient set is like. So again, it's really understanding the priorities and the needs of the project, and then just being able to make those calls and judgments, and then, communicate that to your team, and so that they have all the information when they're looking at links.
Is there anything in the process that you feel like reps or maybe artists don't understand? I mean, it is a very straightforward process, but there's a lot that does happen behind the scenes. After sometimes, I'll get an email with like, hey, send me who you think would be good. And I shoot off a bunch of emails to, links to you. Is there anything you feel like people don't understand about the process?
For me, I think that some people don't understand the volume of talent that we put forth to our creatives. If we're going to triple bid something and they've reviewed 50 links, narrowing down to 3 is quite a lift. So I think that creatives really do go and they look at all these artists and they look at their styles and they see like, can we sell this to the client? Do we think that they can push our creative? And again, this is all before the creative calls. And that's why I go back to saying, if you're one of those 3 creative or 4 creative calls, that's a win. Like you made it through all those links, 3 levels of review. Maybe the first, an associate creative director is looking, but then the final say goes up to, their SVP to sign off on who we're going to bid with. So it kind of goes back to understanding the levels and the process, and we will continue to put forth, but there's a lot of cut downs that go even before we align on who we're bidding with.
And it's really great to hear. And I love that we kind of circled back to what we talked to in the beginning there about how much of a win that is. Mm-hmm. We enter the process usually at the, we'd like to triple bid you. So that is not the tip of the iceberg. While it might be for us, you've been working on this for a long time. And for an artist to recognize, there could be 20 to 50 links that were narrowed down to, like, that is a win in the process. And even if they don't, obviously get awarded the job, what a power, that speaks very powerfully about their work. So it's a great reminder.
Yes, it really is.
Is there anything that would be helpful for you to see on a website when you go to look and share links? Is there like a functionality that kind of you gravitate towards, or a type of portfolio?
I guess I just appreciate how an artist would break out, if on, let's say, your website and we can organize by what topic, like, is it food? Is it portraiture? Is it on location? I think that's really helpful because it kind of helps me narrow down the creative's tunnel vision, or maybe that's backwards to say, like, not to give them tunnel vision, but to say, well, look at their portraiture work and let's see how we compare this with, see their lifestyle and how we can combine these environments.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so how about the creative call? I mean, it's pretty obvious that it's critical. What advice do you have for artists in regards to the call? And does it hurt them if it's not on camera? What makes for a great creative call? What makes for a bad one? Like, any insight you can give into that, like, critical, half hour to 45 minutes would be great.
Sure. Being on camera is definitely a positive. I would say, again, it's as close as we can get to that interaction, that face-to-face. And I would say that if on a call, if a photographer's talking through their approach and what they want to do, but then when they sit down to do their treatment, if their direction changes, then explain it to the creative. Because I've seen creatives get really hung up on what someone might say during a call, and then their approach doesn't match it, and there was no explanation in between. And then I feel like then you kind of just got knocked down a peg because they're confused, Yeah. So I feel like if you're really jiving on something in a call, try to run with that if you can after the call. And if you can't, whether it won't work because of budget, or maybe you had more time to think of your approach and you changed your direction, share that with us so that we can follow along on that journey with how your mind got you from A to B.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think, you get into these like rabbit holes of like, when you're creating the treatment, which is the next thing I'd like to talk about anyway, that I think sometimes if you move yourself in another direction, you forget, like, oh my gosh, I need to update everybody on what I'm doing. It's not just going to be communicated here. Like, they're going to be reading it for the first time in the treatment. If I'm doing something different, I need to speak up, beforehand, set expectations.
We would appreciate that.
Well, and I know the answer to this question because I know you guys, your team very well, but how valued are treatments? Do creatives read them? Are they shared with the client? Do you share the full treatment with the client, or do you just share parts?
All my creatives love and appreciate treatments. I've had several say that it is their favorite part of their job and they look forward to it all the time, because a lot of creative teams, aren't in production all of the time. And so if this is their shoot for the year, like, they want to absorb every minute of it. So yes, we appreciate the treatments and we know how much they are shared with the clients. I think sometimes if there's, one of those 50, 60 page treatments, I have seen creatives pare down, or at least pare down for our bid presentation and then maybe share the full afterwards. But yes, we And we will go back and ask for edits as well. And I guess I would say no one should ever be offended if a creative goes back and asks for edits, because it usually means that they're fighting for you and they want you to hit the mark. So
do you ever let artists present their treatment to you or to the client?
I have had artists present their treatment to the agency team, never to the client. But I feel like for me, that happens more in the broadcast world than for photography. We don't get asked a lot to present our treatments, but it has happened a handful of times. Photographers will.
Now, I know you know this, but like they take so much time, right? So much effort, so much time. And there's lots of conversations on the artist side about just how to make them less time. I don't want to say time consuming because everybody's fine to put the time in, but how to make them a bit more equitable. Yes, less time consuming, less, get more time for them instead of having these short deadlines. The pressure around the treatment is pretty enormous. Are there conversations happening on the agency side about, how to simplify this process a little bit, or do you, or not?
Not really, but it is a large lift for you guys. And when we don't have enough time for a photographer to truly put together the treatment they want, I like to ask if we can do a mini treatment and actually call it a mini treatment, because just to kind of set everyone's expectations. If there's not enough time, they're not going to be able to provide that top level treatment that you're looking to see. So, pull the reference work that makes sense for the project and tell us a little bit about you and your approach, but you don't have to break down every detail, just what you think would be the most important. I think that would be, the best advice.
In those situations, would all three bidders do a mini treatment or just the artist who doesn't have the time?
So for us, if we're asking everyone at the same, like if we're truly triple bidding, everyone gets invited at the same time, has the same time to finish, and is asked of the same, we ask the same thing of all three bidders. So unless there was a reason that someone got added later because maybe someone dropped out or whatever, then they would definitely be cut a break because, it wasn't even playing field.
Yeah, interesting. And is there any conversation on your end? I know industry-wide, there's a huge conversation about this happening, just about compensation for treatments, or maybe adding budget into, or adding money into a budget so that two of the three artists, the two that don't get awarded the job, can be compensated. Have your teams talked about that at all?
No, and I feel like that might be tricky with healthcare and trying to explain that budgets would need to be, we need a whole separate budget prior to. Yeah, that one hasn't come up yet.
Okay. Yeah, there's the AMA is working on some treatment guidelines and some, help to kind of manage the process a bit more. And one of the things that has come up is this idea of, and it's just an idea of just when possible, being able to kind of add some time in there, especially because people are hiring designers and hiring copywriters and things like that. So when it's all ready, I'll share it with you so that you can share it with your team.
Because I feel like that, it's a valuable thing. I think it's, for us, we pick so many battles with our, maybe not pick battles, we have to pick which battles we want to fight with our clients for budget. You know what I mean? So if it's like, if they're getting a little bit of money for the treatment, it may end up being less usage that the photographer who awarded gets, like we'd have to cut and reallocate funds from somewhere. Yeah. So I would love to see that, because then again, if I'm educated, then we can put it forward and see,
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I think kind of what goes along with that is, like, an example is just the other day, we wrapped a job and we were under, and it wasn't a firm bid. And I had talked to the art producer about this ahead of time. And she's like, let's just keep track of the process. And then, I told her how much we were under. I'm like, what do you think? Can we bid? Can we estimate, include in our invoice some money for the treatment? She's like, perfect. So that was a really great way to be compensated for the people's treatment time in a fair way that didn't take away from the budget. And, they were rewarded for that. So I was like, okay, that works. And everybody was really happy with that solution. So
That is a really nice solution. I'm going to go back and I'm going to talk to everyone and find out what everyone else is hearing and doing.
Well, let's talk about the budgets for a second. I know that you guys, your team has always been really good when you have a budget or at least a range or a target, you share it. So thank you for that. I don't need to ask you if you do that because I can just share with our audience that I know that you are very transparent and forthcoming when you can. And it's so helpful because a lot of times, if the budget, especially if the budget is not enough, knowing ahead of time so that we can structure our vision around a smaller budget is very helpful. But also when it's a bit more robust, it is also helpful because it gives us guidelines so that we know, we can maybe do a different type of casting. We could afford, a video casting, or, maybe we can consider, we can make it a 2-day shoot instead of a 1-day shoot, and think about all more content we can give. And then Creative Weekly, we can, share other ideas. So we appreciate knowing the budget. Thank you for that. But I'm wondering, when you're scoping a job and you're thinking about budgets, are you having conversations with your clients early on about usage and, the extent of the creative they can get for the budget they have, or when does the client fit into that conversation?
That's a great question. And it definitely varies by brand and project. I would say when we're scoping for the next year, quite frankly, a year in advance, you're talking about, okay, what projects are on the horizon and are we thinking that we're going to do 3 iterations, and what are our deliverables? Are these going to be living website and all of that? So all of that factors into what we would essentially scope for. And then if the scope changes by the time, a year later, we're actually producing the project, then we have something to back up and say, okay, well, our initial deliverables were 5 and now we're up to 10 or vice versa. So we try to have a good baseline to go off of. But again, educating clients and teams, it takes time. It's not like just one conversation. It's over and over reiterating this is how things work. Usage is applied to photography and we have renewals and things to think about. Do you want to renew again? For example, if we don't have a lot of money this year, maybe we'll have only a 2-year usage, and then we know, okay, well, we'll have our next budget and then we can extend another 3 years. And again, we communicate this all to you, to everyone.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. One thing that you just said really stuck out to me is the timeline. It could be a year. You could scope a project early in the year that doesn't even get shot until later. That's how much time has to, the timeline, it shows before we even get the call. It could be months of, getting budgets approved, getting legal approval, FDA approval, all of those approvals, and that has to happen even after the concept. Obviously the concept has to happen first, then that has to get approved. And so, the timeline is massive.
It is. And again, with the concepts, I could be scoping for a job, but I have 3 different concepts. So we're ballparking and we're saying, okay, well, this one wins and it's more this. And then I'm like, well, how does that affect the decision? Are they going to go with what market research says? Or are they going to go what their budget? So there are so many factors, and that's all happening months prior to when we're actually kicking off with a concept.
Well, and I try and think too, or keep in mind that, okay, so here we are sitting on this creative call with this creative team that has been working on this project for maybe 6 months. So they're so invested and so excited about this. So they're absolutely looking for the equal enthusiasm. The person that they want to bring, of course, they want an amazing person to do it. But it's not like they just came up with this idea yesterday and they are looking for somebody. A lot of times it's been months in the making. So, and sometimes they've had other jobs that are months in the making that may have gotten killed. So this it's very meaningful at this point in the process.
Yes, it becomes very personal because it's their concepts, it's their babies that they've been, evolving and all that. And then once we get to the point where we can partner with, a creative to then bring our vision to life, how great is that?
Yeah, it's great. It's pretty amazing. So when it comes time to awarding a job, every agency who triple bids chooses 3 really amazing artists. There's so much great talent out there. So you will have three really amazing people on the table. Do you find that the clients, because they have such three great choices, do you find that they tend to be making the decision, or do you find that the teams will have a creative recommendation and that the agency will likely follow that? Or just because they're three great options, it doesn't really matter who they choose?
I see it all. I can't say one way or another. Not all the times do my creative teams go in with a recommendation, which is interesting because I feel like that's kind of a new thing. Because usually you feel super strongly about one and then you want to drive them home. But at the same time, there's also the approach of you want to also allow your client to have a decision in that you really stand by, or maybe you stand by at least two of the three, right? Maybe one of the photographers or artists, fell a little bit below the mark or something. But so it is again, finding balance of making sure that you feel confident in everyone you're putting forward, because I have had quite a lot of projects where the client has chosen not to go with the agency reco. And it wasn't about budget. It was about style or approach, or maybe the client didn't want to push it as much as the creative and the agency wanted to. And they want to play it a little safer and more in their comfort zone. So it really depends on the project and on the client.
That's really great to hear. And I hope, and I can imagine that you do, would share that insight with the artist, because, knowing that, or understanding a bit more of the reason, and it could be a reason that mostly I think they're looking to learn, but they're also looking to be made to feel better about the fact that it was out of their control at that point. Like there was nothing they could have done differently at that point. It was just the direction the client went in is also very helpful.
Yes. And I truly think that all that information should be shared back with, the agent and their team and all of that, because again, you put so much time and effort, and if we want to bid again, let's try to make it happen the next time. What can we do differently? If something needed to be differently, or if it was truly just neck and neck and one rose, then they should feel good that they were up there,
Yeah.
So again, finding all the positive, like you said, you try to find the positive, and that's going to lift your artists up too.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so what are your predictions for the rest of 2024? Do you think it'll be busy? Do you think you see it slowing down? I don't know. I mean, who the heck knows? But I'm like,
I know it's hard because I feel like I'm either so busy or it's like that drought in and then I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do with myself? So it's been pretty busy for me. I expect, there's always a little bit of a summer lull, and then it pops right back up like July, August. So, and then we're in Q3, Q4, and it's like, boom. So
I cannot believe it. I keep saying this, but I feel like February was the longest month of the year. I felt like I could not get away from February. And even though it's the shortest month, it was just the year dragged on. I feel like it's already Christmas. Like in terms of where I am in the
year, you are, yeah.
I'm planning and what I'm thinking. I'm like, oh my God, it's like it's just flying by. And I'm sure it's the anticipation of summer and just nicer weather and everyone being, planning and trying to get all this stuff done before the summer. But it feels a bit crazy. So
it does. And every year I feel like it just feels crazier.
That's true. I had this conversation with my daughter last night. I said something about her job or whatever. I'm like, yeah, just add it to your to-do list. And we were laughing, meaning like our to-do lists are so long. We were trying to figure out why is that? And we both came to the realization that there really are no boundaries in our life anymore, between work and home. And we try and create boundaries, but everything, there's no more compartmentalizing, okay, this is what I do when I'm at work and this is what I do when I'm home and these are my friends. It's more about you think you have all this extra time and all this, you have the ability to do a lot. So you take on a lot and you don't say no. So she and I made a pact last night. We're going to try and be better at putting up better boundaries and saying no, or at least saying, can I do that later? Because both of us are there's so many of our own personal things we just never get to. So
I love that. I think everyone should try to say no when they have to, because we do, especially, as producers and stuff, we just want to take it on at all.
Because you're capable. You can. when you're super capable, you're just like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And you want to help and be part of a team. And sometimes it's okay, I think, to just, put up the guardrails. So I'm going to work on being better about that. So
I'm going to too. You inspired me.
Okay, good. Okay, well, I ask everybody the same 2 questions. At this point, I don't think I can change them up. So what is your favorite thing to do on a Sunday? And if you weren't a producer, what would you be doing?
Ooh, well, now that it's spring, if I could say that, on a Sunday, I love to just be outside in the dirt, gardening, maybe hiking, doing some yard work. I feel like I try to spend as much time outside as possible because of how much time I spend inside during the week.
So true. I agree. And spring makes that easy.
Yes. But I do start every Sunday morning with coffee in bed in my robe. I like to be relaxed and calm because, you have to have one slow day. And I feel like Saturday, I'm still winding down from Friday in the week.
That's awesome. Okay. And then if you weren't producing, what do you think you'd be doing?
Ooh, I can't picture doing anything else, Heather.
Oh, that's awesome.
I really can't. I'm someone that always says I love my job. I love the people. I love being challenged by production. So, maybe not a producer for healthcare. Maybe something else down the line that I would do. I don't know.
Well, you're really good at it. You're part of an amazing team. You all have grown together and taught the industry so much. So we appreciate everything that you all do. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. And I thank you for your partnership and your lovely roster of artists, and grateful to have worked with them.
Oh, thank you. Well, please tell everyone we said hello and have an amazing spring weekend. And I know we'll talk soon. Thank you for this. It was really, really insightful. I appreciate everything you had to say.
Oh, thank you for having me, Heather.
Absolutely.